Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we are going to break down who's number 124, all of the matches, including the return of Gordan Ryan taking on Josh Saunders. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Simon.
How you doing, Simon?
I am great.
I'm great, too. It's good to have you back on. We're also going to talk about some of the new announcements, as every week, for CJI, the Craig Jones Invitational. Some big announcements this week, specifically big.
Two big announcements.
Two big announcements this week. Three.
Yes.
Let's go into it. So we just have that. It's it's gonna be a tight show this week. After we go through news, I'll tell you why. All good news. Big announcements for CJI. Both Rotolo brothers announced at the same time for CJI and announced for the same division. Announced for the under 80 kilogram division. We all checked. We're like, wait, that's both of them. It's just the hottest mixtape brother poster of all time.
Oh yeah.
It's that one where it's a cool image of both brothers that ONE FC put out a while ago. And they both got announced for under 80, which means that they're in the same division.
Yep.
But potentially we can have a rematch of the 2018
or 19
Brown Belt World Championships match between the brothers, which was fire in Nogi.
Yep.
In the CGI rule set. So, huge news. Also, other news, if you didn't know, Cade Rotolo is the ADCC under 77 kilogram champion.
Yep.
Like, it is another champion moving over. So, right now, for ADCC, the only champions that we still have in the division are Amy Campo. Women's above 60, now above 65.
Yeah.
Is returning. We have Giancarlo Bodoni, new wave guy, probably not going to move. Gordan, returning.
New wave guy,
I think Kynan right now is also... we don't know.
He hasn't... That's kind of the crazy thing. It's not that, like, we know who's going to ADCC. We're waiting to see continuously who is no longer going to ADCC.
Yeah, and it's such a weird dynamic. I mean, this show is very much sort of built on the ADCC feeder system, and so it's very strange because typically we locked on our roster, and then we get a couple of names added. We have some short lists that we know about and don't know about. We have some reserves, and the list kind of looks similar. You have injury dropouts, but this is the first year we're getting, like, nope, there's a competing organization same day with $1 million payout and $10,001 show money. We're getting a lot of movement. So, Rotolo brothers are super exciting to see. Again, unfortunate to lose them from ADCC, but fortunate that they're getting paid and that they're going to be competing for CGI. So it's like it's a win-lose, it's a win-win, it's a lose-lose, depending on how you look at it. I'm happy that athletes are getting paid. Would love to see them at ADCC.
The fact that this is so far the biggest name-level announcement of anybody that's defected. And having that level of guy be like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing.
Theon's pretty big, too. But the biggest on the men's side, it's a pretty big announcement.
Overall, though, I would argue that Cade as a name is still bigger.
I mean, he's the ONE FC champion. Ty is also the ONE FC champion, and a huge, arguably the biggest, eyes on the organization for grappling. Maybe, Gordan is definitely a bigger name, but he's an ADCC. But for outside of Gordan,
Cade and Ty are the biggest names to have defected so far to CJI.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think this was the one that all of us stopped. We were doing like, whoa.
Yeah, that was big. I mean, the tax, we have two sets of brothers moving over again. Grapplers getting paid is awesome. I'm a little upset to not see returning champions at ADCC from my fan side.
Yes,
but I'm happy that athletes are getting paid and doing what they need to do to further their careers. And like Ty and Cade are compensated very well in ONE FC. And if you compensate guys really well, typically it leads to them having more exciting, better careers. They can take better care of themselves. They can put more money in their camps. We see it with guys that were come out of MMA, make it in the UFC. It goes on to have a significant effect on the quality of camp that they can have long term and the level that athlete can get to. So again, rising tide carries all ships. I think it'll push up the entire sport, and it's good.
The trend that I've loved watching though is the order in which everybody is beginning to defect. It almost seems like a commentary on the order in which people seem to trust that Craig is actually going to pay them at the end of it. It's like at first it was all the B team guys, and then slowly.
I mean, at first it was the Tackett brothers, trials winners, both trials winners. They were the first guys,
and like Luke Rockhold, And then
Oh, yeah.
from that point, it's been like, oh, legitimate name, legitimate name, legitimate name, legitimate name.
Champion.
Champion.
Like Gabby Garcia. Like,
Yeah.
this is really a thing that's gonna happen. They booked the arena. Half the Grappling Rewind team bought our tickets. We all kind of like haphazardly in like separate chats went, oh, we're all buying tickets just to make sure, because like we're gonna be in Vegas Friday. Like there's ADCC events on Friday. We're gonna do some stuff for ADCC, but also like there's other tournaments happening. Like I don't want to not have tickets. So if you haven't got your tickets yet, there are tickets available for the Thomas and Mack Arena, same place that ADCC had. They have a very similar configuration of seating that ADCC had in 2022. Honestly, the venue is great for 2022. I hope that it is great despite the significant change of production.
I'm going to miss the drums. Not going to lie.
I like the drums. Drums are awesome.
The drums
were
cool.
fucking legit,
Even on Flow,
dude,
the drums played
2019
well.
and 2022, they were awesome live, man. Like, they're legit. So,
listen, there's going to be one CJI. It's going to happen this one time, and it'll never happen again.
Yep, and they're going to lose
So,
$3 million.
Let's have fun while it lasts.
Yep.
Let's get everybody paid, and then how fire is next ADCC trials going to be with all these guys coming back, having to go through the trials?
Having to go through trials again. It's like, oh, you're a champion? Yeah, enjoy doing trials. And like, they'll win. I know those guys can win trials, but it's going to be like, oh, cool. Enjoy guys on like Giancarlo and Cade and like Mike, like all those guys going through the trial system again. It's like, oh, they got to win their spot again. But that's ADCC's talked about that. It's like, hey, man, you probably, if you leave late, like, you expect to need to go through trials again. I think that's very reasonable from their perspective. Like, hey, if you've shown us that you're not necessarily super committed to going and showing up if we invite you, like, well, we're probably not going to invite you again, which I think is a very reasonable perspective.
So I watched an interview Cade did this week, and I watched an interview that Fionn did this week.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of Fiona, we'll talk about her matchup.
And
she's announced up with Mackenzie Dern as well.
Both of them talking about their reasons for not doing it. And then we're asked about, like, are you afraid of what's to come? And they're like, well, from what I've been told, what's probably going to happen is I'm just going to do trials next time, and I'm fine with that. So if it means getting paid this time and then going and doing something that you enjoy and are very good at doing anyway
and
next
are
time,
very possible to win.
Why not?
It's like, hey, I'm already the ADCC champion. I can probably win trials again. I can probably go against the really tough regional guys.
I would call that putt if I were you.
I can probably I can probably win trials again. Yeah, I bet that on me. A young athlete with a duplicate clone of me that's also high level. Like, I can probably win again.
Yeah, probably.
So that's announcements this week. We haven't had Simon on the show, and you have not been on the show.
Did you want to talk about Fiona McKenzie?
Fiona McKenzie is also, and I want to get your thoughts on CGI, which you've given me now. Fiona Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern is the 2013 and 2011 under 60 killer. Yeah,
That's jeez.
Yeah, been 10 years. Maybe it was 13 and 15. I said it before on the show. I've messed up the years that McKenzie placed and medaled and is the champion for ADCC. She is now taking on Fionn Davies. Kind of a clash of generations, which I love to see. They are going to be at CJI. It's very exciting. We'll preview the matchup as we get closer. But again, super high-level woman. Mackenzie Dern's been in the UFC for a while now, actually. A pretty long...
like 4 or 5 years.
A while now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so she takes on Fionn Davies, and that was the big kind of question mark of like, we knew that CGI was going to get someone good for Fionn because there is no women's division for CGI.
All super fights.
So Gabby Garcia and Craig Jones and Fionn Davies, I think, is the only other woman announced
right now. Yeah.
For the event, and so we were like, who are they going? They can't put her against someone not world level, and that list is pretty small. I think Mackenzie Dern is a really interesting matchup for her. Another former champion. Long-standing, really high level. It'll be an interesting matchup. The newer school of Fionn versus the legacy older champion in Dern. So.
Fionn was even saying that because Fionn started like in low level MMA, and then
I forgot about that. Yeah, she
transitioned into sport jiu-jitsu as Mackenzie was transitioning into MMA, and that sort of like was like the timetable set up in my head of like, oh, this literally was the baton that got passed, and then now they're matching them up for this,
which is cool.
Yep,
it's a tough matchup for Mackenzie Dern, but
very
it's
tough match. Just Mackenzie's MMA grappling hasn't really changed much the whole time she's there, and and it's funny because again, like I'm listening to this interview and they're talking about how, she's been doing MMA now, so I think like wrestling she'll be better. She doesn't wrestle. Like, she does not wrestle MMA.
And it's kind of one of the big kind of issues people have with her game in the UFC.
Very
and
much
some
so.
of the problems that she's had in the UFC come from that. So it will be interesting.
The style matchup is very intriguing, to say the least.
Especially because CJI is not going to rely on wrestling, so it's potentially swings more in, having a lot of skill sets and rules that favor Dern more than Fiona has a really, really good stand-up with her judo and wrestling background.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun. It'll be a super exciting matchup. Let's move in. That is all the news I have for this. Oh, also we have commentators for CJI. Super happy. We have Josh Palmer, commentator for Cage Warriors, commentator for Karate Combat, former commentator for ADCC, former commentator for Polaris. Like, I love Palmer. That dude gives great commentary, really, really great perspective, really great, very good high-level black belt commentator. Love hearing him. Hal Teague, also phenomenal commentator. I think one of the best commentators in the sport. The way he breaks things down.
You think that was just to stick it to flow?
Maybe. But also, like, how
a little hat tip at least.
It's Hal and Brandon McCaffrey, and they do AIGA together. Like, they work. Those three folks work together frequently, and like also some of the best. Those three guys are some of the best commentators in sports jiu-jitsu, and so like consistently, those three guys. I'm trying to think of instances where they have not provided phenomenal commentary, and I really can't. A lot of commentators in the sport, give or take, those three guys consistently world-class level commentary, so I'm very happy. I'll be at the event.
Probably a random fight to win. We were really tired of watching it and wanted to go to bed, and they were like screaming into really poorly mixed soundboards at like 1 a.m.
Sometimes that happens, but with those guys, it was it's always phenomenal. You can listen to them for years
and years.
You
noticed the worst of production quality on Fight to Win was when they had the best matches, though?
Sometimes. It was always fun. It was always fun. So that is the commentary that we have for CJI. That's awesome. Let's move to recap. So let's start with the main event, Simon. The one everyone's looking at, the one that'll get the most clicks here. Shout out to, by the way, if you like the show, please consider sharing it with the folks at your gym, liking the show, commenting on the YouTube, or DMing. Like, that's always really appreciated. We always like hearing feedback. Shout out to Andre from New Jersey, giving us some cool fight tips and picks this week.
Shout out.
Thoughts. Love to hear it. So let's talk about the main event. Gordan Ryan takes on Josh Saunders. First Gordan Ryan match we've had to talk about since October of 2023. It's been a while.
But when you say it like that, it doesn't sound like that long ago.
But in grappling, like a lot of champions in grappling take matches less frequently because they're getting paid. And grappling, it's harder to get organizations to be able to pay you what you're worth because it's a more niche sport. It's hard to get paid. With Gordan, it's hard to pay him what he needs to get paid to compete, but Flo has no problem putting him headlining every card. Like, very kind of vocally, the cards with Gordan are the ones that make money. The other cards potentially don't break even or don't make as much money as the one. Gordan sells tickets, sells subscriptions, and you have Gordan in your card, your show can make money. So they want to showcase him, which is weird because he got announced kind of last minute for this one, and he got announced versus Josh Saunders. We talked about Josh Saunders last week in the game. This kind of went how we would expect it to go, with Gordan Ryan winning via heel hook, a little bit more harkened to old. You picked up on this when we had the pre-show this week about this was a little bit more of Gordan's like old school, almost like 2016 kind of game a little bit.
I was going to say, it's funny that you said it's how we thought it would be because it was as not competitive as one might expect going into that style matchup.
Yeah.
But the style in which Gordan employed was an homage to his old game.
Very much so.
When he was coming onto the scene and winning all the EBIs and all that. And it was like, oh, he's the leg locky guy. Oh, he's just the heel hook guy. Oh, he's just the heel hook guy. Even years after he stopped being the heel hook guy.
That's partially in 2018 why he went and did IBJJF Nogi Pans and Nogi Worlds, because IBJJF at that point didn't have heel hooks. And he was like, look, I am not just the heel hook guy. My game is good ever. I can beat anyone without the heel hooks. That's why in 2018 he went and did that. And it was a big piece of like sort of he talked about, because the rules that didn't have it, he was like, look, they always give me this much shit for not being a well-rounded guy. Like, I am that good. And then we were talking on the pre-show, there are plenty of guys that he will absolutely go, hey, you're a big, and he usually does it with guys that are big, strong, very good athletes. Hanky Julissa, Nick Rodriguez, who else springs to mind? Like, guys that he's come out and tried to heel hook super quickly. He's like, hey, man, there's a physical attribute here that I don't necessarily want to deal with long term. Like, Gordan is a physical specimen. He's a strong dude, uses his body very well, pretty good athlete. But when he goes into guys like Nick Rodriguez or Hank Julissa that lifted up Big Dan at trials, who's 300-plus pounds almost, he will very quickly go into the leg locks. We typically don't see him get into leg lock shootouts with guys that are also really good, well-known leg lockers. It's not something we've seen him do in years and years, really since everyone learned the DDS system and kind of went, okay, this is what they're going to do, this is how they're going to do it, and the high-level guys figured it out. We see him do less of that now. This strategy for a guy like Josh Saunders makes a ton of sense. It's like, hey, this is a guy that I do not want to have a physical strength for strength battle. I don't want to get into a wrestling battle where Saunders can push me around. He can weigh on me. He can get tired, which is when we did the pre-show, the preview for this, what we talked about was most likely Saunders' best strategy of like, hey, and what we've seen him win numerous matches with is like be the bigger, stronger guy, lean on guys, weigh them down, tire them out, and then when they are tired, when they are less agile, strike, submit them, pressure them. Gordan went, yep, that is absolutely Saunders' strategy for victory here. I'm immediately going to turn this into a leg lock battle.
But also, he actually said in his post-fight interview that, like, while he was warming up backstage, his stomach was just a wreck, and he's like, I wanted to get out of that fight as soon as possible. Yeah. Which is kind of concerning.
This close to 2 months? We're doing this, so this is a weird Saturday show for us. Usually we record the show on either Sunday night or Monday night for a Tuesday release. It's Saturday, July 22nd, because Who's Number One is on
June 22nd.
June 22nd. So, by the way, if all of a sudden there's a bunch of new news for CGI, which there will be as per usual, that's why we're not talking about it, because of the recording date for the show. I'm moving house.
Yep.
So this will be the last. We've had this space for about 6 years for the podcast. Next week, it'll hopefully be in a new space, which is super exciting. It's awesome. Just bought a house. We have moved 50% of the house in a day. I'm running on about 4 hours of sleep. So next week will be a new set, and I'm super excited for what we're able to do in the new space. I had a point I was making here, but I've forgotten what it is, Simon.
Yeah, actually, you kind of lost me there. Oh, we were talking about it's June 22nd.
It's June 22nd, so yeah, more news.
ADCC's coming up in
ADCC
August.
is in literally less than 2 months, July, August.
And Gordan
Ryan, calm down, Misha Tate.
Gordon's going out there and is like, I have one match tonight, and warming up for my one match, I need to get out of there as soon as possible. What's going to happen? Is he trying to do his weight class again? There's nobody in the weight class now. So
conflicting reports. So he's announced in some places as both plus 99, but he's the champion at plus 99 previously, and that was a weird thing that he did last time. It was like no one's ever done that, been a super fight champion, and also went, hey man, I'm gonna take a division too. So in some places he's announced for that, but in the official announcement, in the thing that came out this week for Gordan Ryan, he is being announced as the super fight entrant. Which ADCC always prioritizes and always holds big esteem for good reason.
Let's just say this time Gordan is smart and is like, I will not do the weight class this time. I'm just going to focus on my super fight. Of all the people to be in one match with and your stomach is acting up and you're not feeling so good in the back, is it really Yuri that you want, who's going to be trying to wrestle, be on top, grind it out for the entirety of that time period, if he's just on a night where he's not feeling well?
It brings an interesting wrinkle to the match. Gordon's beat Yuri before. It brings a very interesting wrinkle to the matchup in 2 months before, in his post-fight talking about Josh Saunders. Let's break down the match first. Then we can get into the pontification about the previous match. So, you said, Gordon's old school game. He goes into the legs early, really good heel hook attempt. Saunders does a great job of like shelving, framing outside, clearing the knee line. It's okay, cool. Like Saunders knows what he's doing. Saunders is a trials winner.
Also, just brute forces of strength from time to time. I'm just going to bench press you off of me.
Which is great. Again, Saunders is about 255. Gordan is not 255. He's about 225, I think, was in the matchup. I think there was a...
he looks like a solid 235.
He was either 25 or 35, and I forget what they weighed him in at, but I thought there was 20 pounds, but for some reason I thought Gordan was 225. That would make it 30 pounds. But regardless, 20 to 30 pound difference. And Saunders at certain places, and if you've watched Saunders trials matches, will absolutely leverage that strength advantage. And he did a couple of times, both pushing out of the leg locks, and then in the guard, he was able, and this is sort of the tactics and not tactics, the technical adjustments that we just didn't or weren't able to see from Saunders in this match. When Gordan put him on his back after the leg lock attempt, Gordan kind of wrestled up, forced Saunders to play a knee shield half guard, a knee shield really, like an open knee shield guard. And I was curious. I was like, okay, how is Saunders going to take this? Is he going to play what guard is he going to establish and try to make Gordan play through? Like we've seen Felipe Pena play like a bear trap. We've seen a lot of guys play Gordan into a guard and force him to kind of have some complex passing. Saunders seemed like he got stuck in a weird middle ground with Gordan of like he kind of just kept him at bay. He tried to 2-on-1 hand grip the inside arm, but Gordan kind of went, okay, like, yep, you're going to play a heavy knee shield. I'm just going to kind of windshield up or flop pass over it. That happened like twice in the matchup.
Yes.
Gordan got top position. He got side control. He got a beautiful way to trap the arm after Saunders pulled the Kimura in. We had the topside Kimura. He went to topside staple. Through and through, it was Saunders just defending the position. And a lot of times just lifting Gordan off of him and forcing Gordan to ride over his hands, either come back into the guard or come back into side control. But there was no really offensive guard that we saw from Saunders. It was either just that knee shield half guard or just
bench pressing him off him.
And diligent defense.
The bench press was most of the time his best defense. Yeah. As soon as they got entangled the second time around, though, it was just, I'm just going to reach over and grab your leg, take it across, put it in
the pocket. Yeah.
And you were bringing up, he was sort of giving him the side eye of like, hey, buddy, you going to tap?
Yeah.
Guy.
And it was really brief.
It was a nice guy. It was a nice guy submission.
For all the stuff that Gordan does outside of competition, he has always been a very considerate competitor that people he competes against. And he even said it in the post-fight, which I really appreciate. Like, the online Gordan and the in-person competitor Gordan are two very different dudes. And I appreciate the guy that he is on the mats. He was like, hey, man, I know that Josh has ADCC in 2 months. Like, I don't want to rip his shit up. I don't want to break his leg. So, like, he looked at him and he was like, I will if it, like, Gordan absolutely will if it comes to that. But he is absolutely going to give you the time to tap. And he kind of went, you saw him look, you saw him side-eye Saunders and go, what are we doing? And Saunders was like, you got him. And it showed the level of control that Gordan has in that spot where he gets the heel hook, he pumps to the outside, he spins inside, he gets the hand grip in, comes in, and then he has the technical ability in that spot versus a guy as big, strong, and like a trials winner, like Saunders, to go, cool, I can control this finish, not hurt this guy in our super fight matchup because we both have ADCC, which is so important to both of us in 2 months. Like, I can appreciate that's also really impressive that he doesn't have to rely on just like grip and rip to finish a guy like Saunders, because a lot of guys, when they get something like near Saunders, they have to just throw everything into it. Gordan is that far ahead of this match that he's able to just considerately like apply a submission, apply a heel hook to the leg, and Saunders can walk away there with just the loss and not any injury. Hopefully, no injury going into ADCC, because Saunders, I think, is going to be a really interesting guy at plus 99. He has some interesting traits that I think will be a lot of fun to see how he matches up with.
He's big as hell.
He's big as hell. He's strong as hell, and he's young, which is a great combination. We talked about it last week in the preview, which is like, I think Saunders with this match and a couple more years is going to be a wildly different guy. He has a really interesting training mentality, and I think this match will only elevate him and his technical advancements through his career, so I'm excited for it. It was very much the Gordan Ryan show. I don't think Saunders had one moment in this match where he was controlling, he was putting anything up on Gordan. He was just stuck left defending, and it again, having not seen Gordan in nearly a year, still very, very good, but a bit concerning that he seemingly had to implement this kind of strategy because he wasn't feeling well so close to ADCC.
It did sound like he wanted to get one more super fight in before ADCC, but with the name, he was almost uncommittal in the post-fight interview.
One thing I love about Gordan is, we've talked about this a lot, maybe not a lot on the air. Gordan is not his own coach. He does not run his own training camp, and I think that's one of the things that honestly separates him and his career out from everyone else in jiu-jitsu. Almost everyone else in jiu-jitsu gets to a high level, they open a gym, they open a school, because you need the money. You need the income, the revenue to keep doing it. Gordan has never, he puts out instructionals, but he does not run his camp. John and his girlfriend Sunny run his camp. And so he goes, look at a name, but I'll have to talk to John. Like, John is the guy behind the scenes, very open, that Gordan has running his training, improving him. Like, he has a head coach. He is not his own head coach. He is not his own manager. And as a result, he can just focus on improving as an athlete, and has his entire career from when he was under Gary Tonin to being under John Danaher. like, he doesn't have all the ancillary stuff that takes time away from his own improvement as an athlete, and I think it's one of the reasons why he's the best in the world.
But it did sound like he wanted to get one more in before ADCC. Like, I want to come out here and not feel like complete ass. And
which again I can appreciate. I always want to see the best version of all the athletes every time they compete, which is why, again, I'm happy that ADCC now has the single-day weigh-in. We're going to see a better quality guy on Sunday because they're not dying to make the weight, especially for the lower weight class guys like my guys at 66. Like, that's a tough cut for 3 days for those guys. A lot of those guys, like, by day 3, they are just dead. And if they do absolute, like, that's been a tough cut. If they're in the division still, it's hard on those guys, and it really diminishes their performance. So I like the ADCC going, look, I want to see the highest quality of guy that we can get in there, and Mo is doing really great things to do that. I hope we see the highest level of Gordan versus Yuri, because that's what I want to see when I watch my sports spectacle athletes.
Yes, all those things and more. But regarding Gordan, though, do you just want to see another warm-up tin can match, or is there's no... Most of the guys aren't really taking big super fights right now.
Also, Gordon's in a super weird spot because he's definitively beaten
everybody.
Like, the only match that's kind of interesting now is, like, maybe another match with Hugo, because he didn't sub Hugo. But this close to ADCC, like, and Hugo's in CJI now, so they're not in the same weight class, not in the same division.
But he's playing for a much larger purse right now.
Yeah, he is. So it's like, I doubt any of the guys in CGI will want to take matches leading up to that, because it's, again, 10,000 to show. Most of those guys aren't getting 10,000 to show.
No.
Most of those guys...
10,001.
10,001 to show. Nobody's getting that in grappling, because a lot of these tournaments that are big money tournaments are 10,000 for the entire tournament. So I can let you know that there are very few guys that are commanding that kind of price. Probably a list of less than 10. They can get that kind of money to show up for a match. So I doubt any of those guys are going to go in. He sits in a weird spot where, like, you can't really have a match with, like, Couch because you've had that match. You can't have a match with, like, Jontas Gracie because he's smaller. You can't have a match with Hugo because he's in CGI. You just had the Nick Rodriguez match. I think Nick Rodriguez is fighting for $1 million. Probably would maybe take the match, but it's a weird, risky match this close. Do you give him another, like, trials guy? He sits in a really weird space. Do you give him, like, Philip Rowe? Do you give him another guy that, you know...
You did that one.
But I'm saying, he's had those matches. Do you just give him another showcase match for a guy like that? He sits in a really weird space because he's beaten everyone. And he's beaten everyone soundly that they've put in front of him. Like, you can't give him Penn again. You can't give him Hulk again. You can't give him Gaudio. Gaudio maybe is an interesting match, but it's just... He sits in a really weird space. Fowler is really the only one that it screams out, but that's a Fight Pass Invitational that they'll make.
Vinny Magalhães.
Ooh, the 2018 rematch.
No, I think there's some, like, weird contractual thing, actually. Like, Vinny couldn't do something with Flo or something last time.
Really? I didn't know that. Oh, I remember that, actually, a little bit.
I forgot what it was. It was weird, though.
Gordon wants the Vinny match.
Yeah.
And Vinny, like, they've talked about setting that matchup. Like, again, Gordon's talked about all the guys he has losses to. Leandro's no longer with us, so he can't take that match again. But Vinny's, I think, the last guy that he needs to sort of make off the check mark to get it back. I think literally Vinny's the last guy. So, he sits in an interesting space. I got nothing else on that one, Simon. Do you?
I got nothing else on
Gordon looked
that.
as impressive as usual. Man, he's really good. He retains the Who's Number One Heavyweight Championship. Ain't no one going to take that from him in a while if he continues to look, even in this diminished state, half this good, which is wild to actually say on, like, the broadcast. So, let's move on to the featherweights. We have Diego Pato Oliveira defeating Fabricio Andrey via rear naked choke. Pato retains the featherweight title. He is the featherweight title holder. He is the 55 title holder. Took that off of Dante Leon via heel hook. And now, as of 1 day ago, as of the Friday, he's like, I'll go to 35. I'll take 35 too. And I'm like, I'll watch Pato take 3 belts. That's legit because he's defending him. He's like, he hasn't defended the 55 yet, but, like, he's consistently
He's active.
here. He's active. I'm like, I'll watch the hell out of Pato.
Hell yeah.
At 35. If he can make it, like, I'm worried how much of a hard cut that would be, but also, like, dude, a 3 belt holder for the guys, like, at my size, that's
nuts.
wild. I would love to see it. This match was not one-way traffic.
No.
This match was very much in the beginning. Fabricio Andrey kind of putting it to Pato early.
They were both putting it on each other. They were just fast. They were fast as hell, especially the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Andre had more top position, but at no point, it wasn't like nobody was steamrolling anybody really at any point.
No, there was one. I mean, towards a little bit after the first period. So Flo for this did they do the open scoring, which I really enjoy. I think it's great. I think honestly, I would kind of love to see all combat sports move that way, because I don't really think there's a good reason, even like MMA or boxing, to hide the scores from the athletes. So it's like, hey man, you know what you have to do. You don't have to guess. It's dumb. I think it's kind of dumb to make athletes need to guess what they have to do. It's like, hey man, are you in boxing? Like, are you up 8 rounds, or are you like 4 and 4? Are you 5 and 5? Like, what are we?
Especially with how many bad judges there are across the sports.
It's like, hey, you let guys know. So I actually really appreciate that Who's Number One gives you at least of like, yeah, this you are up on rounds, so you know this. You have to do something. I think even if you're up 2, you can still lose if you have like a super commanding third section. If it's close, and the commanding, I think you can still lose, which is good. But I do like the open scoring. Fabricio Andrey gets the back.
Oh, he
Pato.
won like the first 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and then snapped on that crucifix for a large amount of time.
2+ minutes.
Like 2-3 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's in, and the camera angle is great for this. I wish one thing I want to harp on right now while we're in it. Flo needs a couple extra camera angles, because the referee, I forget the name of the referee, great referee, consistently stands directly in the front of the faces of the athlete, typically where you want the camera to look.
Yeah.
And consistently for this match and the entire card, the entire evening, Flo is slow on their broadcast switching, and so the referee would walk in front of the match, and then it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, camera switch. And it was like consistent. Like, I'm looking at the referee's back too much. Their broadcast team needs to tighten that up. It's bad. And it was like, my wife was watching with me, and she was like, they really need to get better about that, because it's like consistently I'm looking at the back of the ref's pants or butt or shirt. Like, he is in front of the action. You need to switch to another camera angle that has that. The referee takes precedent. He should be where he needs to be. Doesn't matter for the broadcast. You have an athletic event happening. That's his job. You need different camera angles to be able to switch to the side to get around him, because it was frequent. And at this point, it's kind of, they've done 24 events, kind of inexcusable that it's this much of a consistent problem for the slow switching and the lack of additional camera angles to get around action when you have athletes of this caliber. Like, this isn't like a low event. This is a really, really good event with really, really good grapplers, best in the world, trying to figure out who is number one. Give me a little more, because the broadcast needs some improvement.
Hey, they've come a long way from having a 2-hour co-main event on a Thursday night.
God,
Look
we're
at how far we've come.
We've moved in that direction.
Anyway,
moving on. So Fabricio Andrey for a couple minutes here.
Wins the first 5 minutes, holds him in a crucifix for another 3 minutes on top of that. But like, the one thing I was telling you in pre-show, the thing about it, not just that these guys were fast, they were very quick to ditch ineffective offensive ideas.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Strategies.
We rewatched it again, and you brought that up, and I specifically was watching and noting that as soon as they would have a position where like they would grab something and like go to pass or go to do it, as soon as they would. So for instance, Fabricio Andrey would go to pass Pato's guard, and the minute that he engaged and Pato made an angle and would put his foot back in, Fabricio Andrey would no longer keep pressuring forward. He would back out, he would reset, and he would try again or try the same thing. But whenever he met that first stage of offense, he would really not continue to push forward. And it didn't make it stalematey, but it was both guys were doing it. It was really interesting. So I didn't know if they were waiting for a reaction, waiting for the same reaction that they could then counter, or if they were doing the thing that boxers do, where like, I'm getting data throughout the match based on reaction.
No, because they both kept moving. It's just, this avenue is not working. I'm going to pivot. He pivots off of my pivot. Then I'm pivoting off of his pivot. And it kind of helped that they both had the most frenetic pace ever to start the match with. Mm-hmm. But it was in the chaos that Pato took over the match. It was in the scrambles, in the transitions, in the leg entanglements that Pato actually started to enact his offense towards the tail end of the match there.
Yeah. The sequence that he finishes it is awesome. It's basically modified wrestle up sort of from Pato. He comes up, he gets it's not called a broomstick because wrestling terms of broomstick something different, but he gets kind of a back cross ride on the leg of Fabricio Andrey, and he eventually turns that into back control. And then you picked up the final transition on how he's trapping the arm as the rear naked choke comes over.
That was a different match. That was the.
No, that was the match.
No, it was the.
It was Chen,
yeah.
But also in this match that Fabricio Andrey is trying to push the hook off of Pato, and to prevent Pato from getting the hooks in for the back take. And the finish sequence comes from...
Oh, yeah, you pointed that out.
Oh, I thought you pointed it out.
You pointed it out.
We were excited. He pushes the hook off, and he spends a little too long fencing the hook.
A second too long.
Maybe a second. And Pato is super flexible, comes over, traps the hand, not like super hard to the body, but just enough where Fabricio Andrey has to go and kind of like lift his hand above his chest to get high up. And in that time where he's essentially a 1-on-2, Pato punches the choke across and starts to crank, and Fabricio Andrey gets his hand out, but Pato's already hand behind the head on the rear naked choke and punching in, and Fabricio Andrey can't dig to fight the choke enough. But it was like one little mistake that Fabricio Andrey made of like just fighting the hook too long to prevent the back take. His hand was too low. His hand gets trapped just momentarily, and it's long enough for Pato to have the 2-on-1 control to punch through and to win. And it was just like a really impressive. I love it. I love at the highest level like this when you see those, not mistakes, but like tactical choices that was like, yep, that guy capitalized on that choice you made to fight the hook and was able to win. Pato retains here in just a beautiful submission. It was just super tight. Fabricio was doing a great thing in preventing the hook, but prevented a little too much. Pato gets over, and Pato's super flexible at the knees, I think, and the hips in a really interesting way that I don't think he gets as much credit for as he deserves. A lot of people wouldn't have been able to trap the hand like this at the speed that Pato did. A lot of people would never have been able to adjust to make this catch that Pato makes. So it's neat that we were able to see it. And the camera angle for it is great. You can see the hand get caught. You can kind of frame by frame it. You can see him pull it out. And it was just a really interesting little up. That was the mistake. That was the thing that he capitalized on. The margins are so small at this championship level. So it was a ton of fun. Really back and forth. Again, it's pretty rare in grappling that you get like a momentum swing like this. And so I always like, especially in title matches, it just shows how close the level is and how good the matchmaking is. So yeah, love it. Would love to see Pato go down to 35 if it doesn't diminish him too much. Again, I want to see the highest quality of athlete. Just because a guy can make the weight doesn't necessarily mean I want to see him perform at that weight. But man, 3 titles for a guy my size would be
epic.
Would be cool. I would love to see it. And Pato's a really great grappler, and he's just continued to be amazing.
Fast as hell.
So moving on, let's move on to Jonathan Gracie versus Jacob Couch. Jonathan Gracie wins a decision on this one. This was almost a weird match.
Not as fast as exciting.
Absolutely not. So 5 minutes of this match are maybe more than 5 minutes of this match are 2 different sequences. The first sequence is Jacob Couch from the guard. He does a really good job of grabbing a Kimura on Jonathan Gracie, and Jonathan Gracie does a great defense from the guard. He reaches behind Couch's back and grabs the wing of the arm that Couch is using for the Kimura, so Couch can't...
You skipped over the minute and a half of bad wrestling before that, of just collar tie,
yeah.
and then the world's sloppiest single.
Simon, this is jiu-jitsu.
I understand,
we
but...
just call that wrestling here. We just call that wrestling.
No, the effectiveness had nothing to do with how insanely sloppy the actual takedown was.
Yeah.
But from that point on, it was, oh, okay, Gracie just stayed on top. From, what, a minute and a half into the match, that's like the...
Something like that.
13:30 mark until the end.
About that, yeah. The way he was blocking the Kimura was neat. And they kind of got into this weird stalemate where I was, watching with my wife, and I was like, hey, he needs to do something. She's like, what can he do? He's like, he can't. And Jonathan Gracie can't let go of the arm because he lets go of the arm, he gets Kimura'd. And Couch, either continues to fight for the Kimura or lets go and he's back in the guard. So it's like this weird stalemate where it's like Jonathan Gracie can't do anything here. He is defending the Kimura exactly how he should from this position. There is nothing else that he needs to be doing or can really be doing without giving up huge position for Couch. Either Jacob needs to pull this out, which he can't because Jonathan Gracie is defending, or let it go. And eventually Couch goes, all right, I'll let it go.
Well, it was actually kind of interesting. Actually, I noticed that at that 5-minute mark, that when they announced that Gracie was judge's favor, his corner, the crowd seemed upset by that, actually.
Couch is a huge fan favorite, man.
I understand, but it was almost like, yes, Gracie was in top position, but are they just wondering, like, hey, Couch is actually attempting a submission here.
I didn't really have
and has been for the last 5 minutes, and they've done nothing else in that time.
Yeah. I didn't have a huge problem with that because Gracie had done a little more positionally after the position was broken. He had done more after that, and Couch had grabbed a Kimura, but he hadn't been able to do anything with it. So it's for me, in my eyes, it's like, yeah, you're defending it, but you're like defending the first stage of the position. You're not really defending a sub. You're not really defending a sweep. Couch wasn't able to make any hay with that initial position, and so I didn't really have a huge problem with, okay, Gracie's more active now in the passing. He's then doing something else. I didn't really have a huge issue giving it to him there. I can see the argument.
Yes.
Like it's a good argument of like, okay, well, if he was defending it, does that not score? But in my head, it's like, okay, well, he's defending the first level of a transitional position change. It never got yanked out, never got pulled away. And then Gracie had some sort of positional work that he was doing. I didn't really have a problem. Jacob Couch was my guy. Didn't really have a problem with it.
No, I mean, really, Gracie just deadlifted him off the mat at that point, and then was just waiting for gravity to break his guard.
Yeah. And then he sort of gets in this weird, like, sit-through leg position. And Couch does a great job trying to take the back here, but John Gracie kind of goes, okay, I just have to kind of keep this underhook and prevent you from doing this. They sat in this position for 3 minutes?
A while.
Probably at least. I mean, so I watched it live with my wife and like, man, they're still here.
Well,
we're
so
still in this
they
position.
were in that position, and then there were a few instances where Couch was trying to get underneath the leg.
Which is good.
Gracie would not let him.
Yeah, and John did a great job there.
And so it would be like, it wasn't like they were literally just sitting there in a static position. There would be an attempt, yes, but that attempt would result in nothing, and then they would remain in that position again.
It was like there's a grab for it, but it doesn't change the position at all. So it's weird it's like, how do you score that? It's
tactically at this point, I thought it was kind of weird because Gracie continued to just play this positional game.
That's
like he was going to north-south all the time.
That's kind of the game he has always played.
I understand, but with this rule set, it was like it was continuously. It was in a submission-only match it was a match designed to encourage submissions.
Yeah.
That he was playing an entirely positional game where he was dominating the whole time. I'll just go to north-south for north-south's sake almost.
Quick aside, for people that don't know, submission only, in like in truest sense, means like the match can only end in submission. Time limit is irrelevant. That is implied. We say submission only. For this, it's not technically. We try not to refer to it as submission only.
A rule set in which they favor submission at times.
Submission is the only way to win unless you have a decision or something. That's not the only way to win. We had a term for it, and I'm blanking on the term because I got about 3 hours of sleep.
Whatever it might be. It was weird seeing Gracie keep all that top pressure. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to go to north-south, but not attempt any subs. And then I'm just already back in second. I'm going to north-south again. And then
he played a really good positional game, and Couch
really
wasn't able to do really anything off of it. And so Gracie takes a pretty clean, clear decision.
It was weird seeing Couch be out physicaled like that. Like he kind of got sunned there.
It reminded me of the Gordan match a little bit.
Yeah, but yes, that was Couch going up a weight class though.
Like 2 weight classes.
Okay, but this is at middle.
Yeah,
and you were kind of like seeing another person in the same weight class as Couch really play the bully, static hold, big strong guy role and like not allow him to really get anything going off was a little weird. Like he looked small. Like it made him look small.
Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic. And again, it's kind of what Jonathan Gracie can do to guys. If you let, and we talked about it on the last show when we previewed it, if you let Couch get going, he can steamroll anyone. If you don't let him get going and you can pull him out of the areas where he is most comfortable, you can take victories over him in this kind of match. Like he is so strong in his leg entries, in his armbar entries. Like he's super strong in the places where he can invert underneath you and over top for like Troy, like things like that. But the minute you can kind of stalemate and stagnate that away from him, there are avenues to kind of take and beat his game. And that's, Jonathan Gracie has great coaching, saw that, did that, and executed the game plan and took the middleweight championship.
Yeah, man.
So
what can you say?
Yeah, love seeing Couch, but yeah, it was a very, very clear win for Jonathan. Let's talk about your next match. You loved this match.
I love this
You like
match.
Victor Hugo. I like Victor Hugo.
I love Victor Hugo.
Victor Hugo defeated Javier Zatru. I had it on the pre-show. Zatruski. Zaruski.
Yeah.
Now, there's no T there. Javier Zaruski via rear naked choke. Simon, break it down.
So this was a lot of offense from Victor Hugo and Javier not really being able to answer much of it. Victor pulls.
Victor Hugo's 23.
How?
By the
How
way.
is he always so young?
Dude,
Every time I'm like, I'm going to watch Victor Hugo. Man, that guy is young. How young is he? He's 23. How? He's still 23 somehow.
I know.
He's been 23 for like 5 years.
I was like, when we started the podcast, he was 16. I'm like, that's crazy. He's this good. He has 3 wins over Nick Rodriguez, and he's 23. I'm like, good luck, everyone at plus 99. So continue on that. I want to mention that one thing.
Hugo sits basically immediately, like from a heavy collar tie he pulls.
Yeah.
And from sitting is initiating all of the offense, which is not typical in heavyweight matches.
It's so for you.
I mean, more typical now than ever.
It's
But
typical for Victor Hugo.
yes,
This
amount
looked to
of
me
offensive
like a
output,
Victor Hugo match.
the total amount of offensive output was just like, wow, he's still going. He's still going. It's not just that he was pushing a pace, but he was the only player in that game.
Yeah, that's a
he
good way to put
was
that.
he's trying to arm drag to guillotine, arm drag to let me close in and try to get this underhook and start making attempts at the back. And it wasn't until a few different sequences where he would come up from sitting to take the back, and then
Really, the wrestle ups. Like the wrestle ups are the story of this match where Victor Hugo was doing, and then he would go, okay, and he would commit. He would sort of get Javier to engage, and then he would wrestle him up, and Javier would try to escape, and then Victor Hugo, by the second one, Javier was kind of escaping off the mat. Not I think intentionally off the mat, but like they were big guys close to the edge.
And it happened twice in a row.
Yeah, and then the second
The second one, he actually was given the back on the reset, which he kind of mildly protested the first time, but then the second one clearly had it.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it was just after that reset,
Victor Hugo, on your back, good sir. Good luck, everyone in the world.
very much almost the same submission as almost all these other rear naked chokes of I am going to have this insanely slick transition to the back. This one was off a reset, but from there, trap the arm, get in, and then choke the face.
Yeah, man. I think the closest, who had the cleanest one that was, I think Joseph Chen. We'll talk about Joseph Chen.
Yes.
Everyone else on this card, for the most part, it was like nose down to mouth was the arm, and it was just a face crank
I was saying
over.
specifically this one was Victor's arm was so big, it smothered like half of his face on the choke.
Yeah.
So a couple of them were like, oh, he's like right on the jawline. Man, that must have been painful. This one was his forearm is just like 7 inches wide or
Victor
something.
Hugo, an enormous man.
Yes.
He's a big guy.
I didn't even notice it until I saw like the change of complexion in Javier's nose on the replay. That he was just choking his whole face off.
Yep.
I love that one.
Javier was gonna I think had made a push in the press conference to go against Gordan. Gordan kind of called him out for that and went, "Hey man, you kind of shit the bed." I was like, "Oh, that is rough to like lose your match and then have Gordan go in his post fight." I'm like, "God damn,
good job, buddy."
Yeah, but hey, man, I think again Javier just got an invite to ADCC. We're gonna see him in plus 99. That is usually an avenue for guys to make big improvements. Victor Hugo took a dominant victory over him here, but I think he's the guy that we're going to see in the future here. Moving on to the next one. This is not a weird match.
I liked this match.
I liked it. It just, I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm concerned about our ability to be able to kind of put them in a streamlined, digestible way for a fight breakdown. Tynan Daupra defeated Jacob Rodriguez via decision.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of. So let's talk about let's talk about the funny things first. The funny thing is, you brought it up. We were eating dinner. You went Tynan Daupra and all the AOJ guys play like there's a gi, and I every time I see Tynan play, the specific thing that he does that a lot of gi players that play a lot of gi that move over to no gi, the way that they retain the guard when they are flat on their back and they do the egg beater kick is they will spin under the arm and they will like fence this wide angle around the shoulder and then punch it too.
As if there's a lapel there.
As if there's a lapel there. And if the no-gi guys will typically fence it much closer to the body and around and don't tend to prioritize going over the arm in the same way to trap their leg in that position. And there's a over and over and over, you see Tynan make this like whoop, this big motion to, and it is beautiful to see how precise he is when he puts his leg into the position. But it was just over and over again. Man, that's a guy that plays a lot of gi because he does that like the gi guys do, and it works in no-gi.
Overall, it was Tynan from the start, continuously throughout. He was the one pushing the offensive agenda. It never seemed
after the
like,
first period, because Jay Rodriguez, to his credit, early in the match, is able to pass the guard. He gets a beautiful like body lock variation, kind of how his brother does it. He slides over. He gets to mount. The funny thing is, so I counted this out because I was curious how long he actually held mount. I don't think in IBJJF that where Tynan is, primarily a competitor, he would get the score. He'd get the ad for it, but I don't think he would have had to control it enough to get the score for mount. ADCC, he wouldn't have scored for mount here. I thought it was very interesting to see how well Tynan gets ahead of that. Boom, he got mounted, which is crazy to see Tynan get mounted, and then immediately is off the position and gets out. In kind of an interesting parallel to the way that J-Rod does that. But
a lot of Tynan's offense was him initiating it. A lot of J-Rod's offense was reactionary.
And we talked about that. I think that's the big piece to take away from this match is, and sort of Jay Rodriguez now is 0-4. And he posted about it today on who's number one. But he's only fighting really, really high-level guys. But we talked about kind of our thoughts for why maybe he is having the struggles he is having at the highest levels, other than he's only fighting the best guys in the world. His game is so reactionary that a lot of times it doesn't seem like he is putting 100% into his offense because he's leaving a little on the table for the ability to counter react and do, and that works great until you run into the elite level guys where you need that extra 10% commitment to be able to get past the guard, to be able to finish the sub, to be able to get and secure the position. And the way that Jay Rodriguez plays a lot of these positions, he's never able to fully settle or fully impose his own game because he's so willing to counter-react you and beat you in the counter-reaction. He's so successful with that he tries to do it at the highest levels, and the highest level guys, they're playing their A game. That's what got them to the dance. You probably can't out-react their best shit.
I remember I was at a local tournament, and J-Rod was down here. And
a Newbury a couple years ago, right?
He legitimately hurt somebody, broke their whole shit off.
Yep.
And
Kimura, wasn't it?
No, I want to say it was a straight ankle. He broke somebody's foot, I thought. Really, really, really bad.
You texted me about this years ago.
And this was still unknown early blue belt J-Rod.
And we knew he was Nick Rodriguez's brother.
Yes.
And this was before trials. This was
But then when he's at trials, he does well. When he's at locals, he is actually crushing people. When he gets to these upper echelon guys, it's not that it looks like he's not playing on their level, but when he's playing at the highest level, his offense is at at 80%, 90% intensity. When he's not the bully, when he's not the boy wonder that is actually hurting grown men, he is not always 100% on offense. Even when he's doing things on offense, he goes for a double leg takedown and almost gets guillotined. He gets to mount and then gives up position on the leg entanglement. He loses the leg lock battle and then Tynan comes up on that. All those instances where he is not 100% forward are those small moments where an incredibly skilled competitor like Tynan was and here's my open, and now I'm on top.
Yeah, they're able to capitalize on those little responses that he plays in that reactionary game in a way that guys that aren't elite can't do, but because he's only fighting the elite guys, he's consistently running into this problem now where it's he can't out-react his competitor. You mentioned it, all three of the sequences I wanted to talk about, the leg lock sequence, and initially what actually gets the takedown was cool, but J-Rod hits a beautiful double leg. Tynan immediately counters with a guillotine. All of J. Rodriguez's defense in this match, Mika Galvao match, pick every crazy thing he's defended. J. Rodriguez has...
He had a crazy Omo attempt also.
Yeah.
That he made J-Rod work to get out of.
J-Rod is so good at reacting to your offense. You were never getting to like an attritive like squeeze battle on a sub with J-Rod because he is constantly moving, he's constantly forcing you to adjust, and he's pulling out of the sub the entire time. Watch every triangle attempt he gets into from here, from Tynan, the guillotine attempt. Like, it's never, he never finishes the double leg and then sits in the guard and then starts pulling his head. He starts feeling the guillotine come down and he's immediately pulling his head out in a way that like he is elite in his response in those spots, which is why he is so hard to put away. Reminds me a lot of old school Gary Tonin.
Yeah.
Incredibly hard to put away, incredibly hard to lock down, but Gary had some other different tools, also from a different era as
Gary's
well.
offense was very exciting, very forward, very submission-oriented.
Yeah. But J. Rodriguez, consistently, it's really interesting to watch him escape from everything because he never gets locked down into something. Like, he always makes motion happen. It's just really interesting, and it's a very unique character trait to him.
Especially, like, at the end when Tynan has his back. They must be slippery at that point. It's, what, like 3 minutes left in the match? And then
Less than that, I think.
Yeah, no, it's like a minute and a half left in the match. Then he spins into guard. Like, at no point is he ever, woe is me, defeated. Like, he's still scrapping every second.
He got Bodoni's back in the end of their match, almost finished Jean-Carl after, like, Jean-Carl almost finished him. It's like, he's incredibly dangerous later in the
never
match.
out of it, yeah.
And it's just so wild that he consistently can just make an angle, make motion, make movement, and you never get into this squeeze where you're getting to finish him. It's a really interesting trait, but again, we're seeing a lot of the same consistent issues in the way that his game is structured. I think it's partially because he does no game planning for his competition. He doesn't really understand his competition openly. He talks about, like, he didn't know who Tynan Dalper was. He hasn't watched tape. He hasn't looked at his game. And that's great because he can just play the reaction game. Unless the guy is elite and world level like Tynan is, then Tynan's going to have a reaction to your reaction of his A game and going to be able to capitalize. Like on the double, on the thing that turns Tynan over, it's a footlock attempt, and then Tynan is able to grab J. Rodriguez's foot and turn him and put it to his butt. J. Rodriguez doesn't have the best guard in the world, and Tynan is one of the best passers in the world, and so Tynan's able to capitalize on that. It's like those little moments where J. Rod's heavy reactionary game, had he got his leg out and his hips behind, he wins that sequence. But if he doesn't, then the world elite guys can put him in a space where he has a problem on the bottom.
It's also because he's a name, he's never not going to be able to go against these guys.
Yeah.
He's too popular to put a tin can in front of.
You need that step back so that he can get like a really good super fight match versus a guy that he can implement a strong, steady forward game on. They're just throwing against elite guys. I think this match also shows how much Tynan has to work on in Nogi.
Yes.
Because this was a tough match for Tynan in many spaces. And it shows that like Tynan is pretty much where we thought he was in Nogi. Very, very good, winnable match. He won it. He used his tactics and strategy to be able to do that very effectively, and his technique. But I think if you're going to put him against the best guys in the world, like guys that are ranked higher than J-Rod, he is going to struggle significantly, and I don't think he will win all those matches based on just some of what we're seeing here in the way he responds in Nogi. But very fun match, really interesting match. I think we'll look back on this match in years and go, oh yeah, that was one of the first kind of Tynan's first Nogi matches. Very good match. Took a lot away kind of on where both athletes are at, and some changes I can see for both guys' game, but really impressive win for Tynan. Anything else on it?
Nope.
Next match, we have Adele Florentino defeating Ana Rodriguez via decision. This was not necessarily relatively slow-paced, but it was very much Ana Rodriguez. I'm just going to summarize the whole match here, unless you have other points.
No.
Very much Ana Rodriguez initiating one thing and then not making any change to that, and not even most times initiating forward movement like not really shooting, not really trying to pass, not
standing
really,
in front of the open guard as opposed to trying to pass the open guard.
Yeah. That was a lot of the match. Adele had a couple of nice sequences wrestle up. Anna had one sequence early that was good, but really it was Adele just doing more. Like, she was the one pushing somewhat of the action and looking to progress the match, and A-Rod was just not for the last 2 periods of the match.
Well, it's actually funny that Anna won the first 5 minutes, and when they announced that, Adele kind of looks up and is like, what the hell? Like, there wasn't much action in the first 5 minutes, so obviously it was probably pretty hard to score at that point, but Adele at that point was like, okay, let me actually start initiating the offense.
So Anna had one sequence, and then Adele was finishing a much stronger sequence as it was called. So the timing of it was very funny. I'm like, oh, they've made this call 10 seconds ago. They are now reeling it to the audience, and Adele has just had the biggest moment of the match on top, taking Anna Rodriguez down and starting to pass, and she's like getting scored again. She kind of goes like, the fuck?
So immediately after that, she goes for a scissor takedown. Right after that gets announced, not after that first 5 minutes had happened. As soon as it gets announced, she's like, all right, goes for the scissor takedown, attacks the leg. Rodriguez defends, but then Adele just kind of takes over from the rest of it.
Yeah, and she just does more.
Yes.
Like, not much else happens in the match, but Adele is the one from that moment forward that is doing the match progression, so she takes it. That's the match. Really would have loved to see more from Anna Rodriguez here. Was pretty disappointed in kind of the level of inactivity for forward progression. I think Flo needs to look at this match and go, okay, we need to change our rule set. You need to do what ADCC does and do some more forcing of engagement as the top player. Like, hey, if nothing's happening, the rule set needs to facilitate something happening, and that was not present here. It needs, like, Anna Rodriguez needs to have a rule set that will force her into more engagement here, where we can get matches like this, and I don't think it showcases the athletes as well as it could.
No.
Move on. Oh, yeah, this match.
Though.
Hell yeah. Joseph Chen defeats Eliza Dorsey via submission, via rear naked choke. I love Joseph Chen. This dude, Elijah Dorsey beat Nikki Ryan at Trials in a really weird finals match. One is going to ADCC, and okay, he beat Max Hansen recently. Very, very good. And we were like, okay, this is an interesting match for Joseph Chen. Elijah Dorsey typically will play a slower game, a more stally game, very tactical, can get to where he needs to get his points, and win. Him and his whole team understand the rules of whatever they're competing in very, very well and craft some of the best game plans in the sport to win there.
He actually was pretty active from the close guard, though.
In this sequence.
Yes.
But just generally speaking, his game that we have seen and the match that we've talked about him recently at the higher levels. Joseph, they were playing the bullshit wrestling where it's like you interlock the hands and do it. Joseph Chen has a great breakdown of the takedown sequence here. It's just a straight up inside trip.
It's like it almost looked effortless, though.
Dude, he breaks down on Instagram. If you have watched this match, go find Joseph Chen's Instagram and listen. It's like a 30-40 second breakdown of him in the room at B Team showing how he does it. It's like, oh, it's the exact sequence. And he talks about, okay, Elijah gets the underhook here, I counter here, I do this, and then we step back, and then as he goes to step, I time it, so I sweep his foot out. And it's not, initially when I watched it, I thought it was like high inside knee, almost like you do like on a Sotogari or like an inside trip where you slam the guy straight down. Like a Sotogari is a judo throw, it's a back sweep where you throw and you typically will flatten the guy, and it's not like an inside trip where you'll, like JT Torres will drive you forward and like roll you down.
A more folk-style wrestling style of an inside trip.
Yeah, it is a very much like boom, straight down and flat.
Yes.
And this is exactly what Joseph Chen does, but he does it from a low foot grip. Not grip. He like sweeps the low end of the foot. That timing on this is beautiful because basically Elijah Dorsey is in the process of stepping. Joseph Chen intercepts the step, turns the angle, and just flattens right into the guard. And I was like, oh, that was really good take. It's a flat back takedown. And he goes whop onto the mat. And it was just a great moment of just like, oh, that was a really clean takedown. That's like a match defining takedown. And then it ended up in Elijah Dorsey's guard. Elijah Dorsey has a very good guard. And Elijah Dorsey has phenomenal posture control. For minutes of this match before Chen's able to open the guard, Dorsey is unwilling to open the guard. And he is pulling Chen's head down consistently, pulling his head. And every time Chen goes to stand up, he's forcing Chen to stand up because he's posture controlling him. square. And then Dorsey immediately goes for the ankle sweep, double ankle sweep, dummy sweep, and Chen has to fold his hips, turn his legs, and like starts to defend this. It happens 3 or 4 times. Eventually, Chen goes, okay, this isn't working. Really prioritizes the posture control, opens the guard, and then just starts initiating some beautiful passing sequences. Gets to a body lock, variation of a body lock. Windshield wipers over to the side, gets the top side knee, and then counter cuts over, cuts back through, still with the double unders on the hook side. Gets in. I was like, okay, he passes. Like, that was really impressive. Goes to a mount, and then from the mount, the camera angle is perfect to catch it. You see the underhook side that Joseph Chen has. He shucks Eliza Dorsey up and ends up in a S-mount quarter guard. And you were talking about the sequence that actually led to the back take was a head position from Dorsey.
Yeah, so from 3/4, he has the top arm underhooked at that point. And at that point, it's not like it's like late in the match, everybody's sweaty, and he's like just trying to push the back of his head against, try to slip out or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not like Dorsey would normally pull his head out kind of hard and turn.
No, Chen at that point, I'm saying, with the underhooked arm here, Dorsey's arm is back here.
Yeah.
Instead of Chen trying to slip his hand out, Dorsey barely kind of floats his arm just enough, and as soon as that pressure, that moment, that window was there, Chen immediately uses that lack of pressure to spin around, take the back.
Like a chair sit back take, essentially.
Flawlessly, though.
Beautiful, yeah. It was one of the cleanest, like, chair sit back take spins I've seen this year.
And with the spin, traps the arm immediately. It wasn't I've got hooks in and now I'm fighting up and up and up and up and I'm going to trap an arm on my way up. On the spin, has endgame at that point.
Dude, he traps the arm with the spin. You get there like, oh, he has the back. Oh, he has a high back mount. And the arm's trapped. And it's not, sometimes you can trap an arm different ways. Like Fabricio Andrey and Diego Pato, it's trapped for a second, but Fabricio can get his arm out. This is like you have cross hooks over top of the arm.
Calf to bicep at that point.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, you are not getting out of this without going through a triangle, without having a pretty phenomenal power sequence to get out of this, or a really crafty back take defense. And then because Chen has 2-on-1 essentially, you see him just go, cool, punch Dorsey's arm down and like fight for fight, and then punch the rear naked choke across, immediately threads the arm, and it was like, oh, this is very, very tight. And Dorsey doesn't have a hand.
Did he choke the face on this one? I forgot.
No, clean.
Okay.
It was clean under the neck. Because of the position that Dorsey's in, it's hard to get him chin to chest because you can't get the arm out if you're chin to chest like that. And so he's forced almost up a little bit in this position. Chen also rocks him back as he's pulling the arm down to punch. It just beautiful technique from Joseph Chen.
It was a flawless victory. Like that was
really. It was like almost like Gordan and Josh flawless. It was just like from sequence to sequence to sequence. Like Dorsey had some good moments in the guard, but all of the active sequences in the match that resulted in any change of position were Chen. There was not a change of position that was not initiated by Chen. It wasn't Chen taking huge ground into an area that he wanted to be in. I cannot wait for Joseph Chen on August to see what he does. Man. I am super excited. He has been looking better and better, and this is a huge win for him over Eliza Dorsey. Beautiful match, great technique, and he breaks it down on Instagram. So go back and watch, because it's all stuff that's very actionable. Of like, and kind of gives you an insight into how Chen thinks about the game. Longtime Grappling Rewind listener, and so happy to see him doing well.
Shout out.
Next match, anything else on that one?
No.
Okay. Next match, we had Ethan Cullinston defeating DeAndre Corbre via decision. Miranda called this match, called the style of this match. It was basically old veteran, not old, but like veteran that's been on this level for a long time, Ethan, versus really, really prospect, great up-and-comer DeAndre Corbre. And she was like, Ethan's just going to have a few more tools in a few more places and a little bit more experience, and that will be the defining factor of the match. And I was like, and she won me over during the preview of it last week and hit the nail on the head.
Yep.
For that.
Every position they ended up being in, Ethan was just a step ahead.
After the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
DeAndre had some great moments first.
That is not saying that DeAndre did not have great moments, and even he had great moments later also, but in each of those positions, whenever they ended up, okay, there's a scramble, we are going to be in leg entanglement, Ethan was ahead in terms of that. They're scrambling,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to go to guard. Ethan was better in each one of those scenarios. He had an answer that Cobre didn't.
It's just a level of consistency in the entirety of the match, and then later in the match,
Later, he started smothering him.
is when Ethan really
Yeah.
started. You saw him sort of figure out where DeAndre wanted to go, figure out how he was initiating his sequences, and then getting ahead of them in like.
This is the boxer downloading. This is
Yeah.
took the first few minutes and then got everything, and then just, I'm going to be on top of you. I'm going to be pressuring. I'm going to be throwing on body triangles at all until the end.
Yeah, he spent a huge piece of this match in like a quarter mount, tech mount, or like just in mount, working for position, working for the back. Very, very clear victory here for Ethan. Very close to the beginning. I think both guys had. It was very funny because Ethan was super excited to go against Kolabate because we had to wrestle, and then he gets DeAndre, and it's like, cool, you have to wrestle now because DeAndre's going to ADCC trials winner, much like Ethan. Ethan's a 2-time trials winner, 2-time invitee for ADCC. DeAndre's a trials winner, so it's like you got to wrestle suddenly. Ethan's like, fuck, and they talked about it on Superman podcast, and it was a great moment. But yeah, Ethan looked very good here. I hope this is the form that he looks in ADCC. DeAndre, again, had great moments initially as well. Was on the offense early in the leg locks, but I think Ethan had the better responses, which allowed him to, again, later in the match, take the dominant positional victory that he did. It was a cool match, and it's a nice benchmarking match. It's a rematch from 2017, where Ethan took it then, and now he's taking it again in 2024.
He looked great.
We'll run really through with that. We'll run really quickly through the preliminary card. Declan Moody beat Felipe Costa by rear naked choke. Again, dude, Declan has looked really good. The pressure that he put on Costa this entire match was impressive because I've seen Costa live. Like, I've commentated Costa's matches live for Copa Elite. Dude's real good. He's a Victor Hugo guy. He's a Six Blades guy. Super, super phenomenal world level medalist. To see what Declan did here was phenomenal. We knew Declan was good. This really showed me just how good Declan is, because this was just beautiful transitions, beautiful passing, putting a level of pressure on Felipe Costa that I have not seen him ever have to deal with in matches that I recall Costa in. Just bell to bell. Eventually is able to take his back in a beautiful transition after a hip switch, and then just locks on the choke and gets the rear naked choke pretty late into the match.
Yep.
But it was just a beautiful performance from Declan. And again, I'm really, really excited to see him come August. Next match we had Taylor Hillshaw versus Lauren Sears. Went to referee's decision. Great pressure, great positional work from Taylor there. It was really Lauren looking for subs from the bottom, and Taylor just consistently out-positioning, being able to pass, being able to get around, being able to just do much better positional work around Lauren, and again takes a pretty dominant positional victory over Sears here. We also had Jordan Holy versus Andrew DeGraff. This is Jordan Holy going against a guy that'll play the legs with him. Andrew DeGraff had some great moments, but Holy was absolutely in control of the second bite of every leg lock sequence. DeGraff would get something, Holy would counter into a leg lock. Holy would go, DeGraff would try to get out, Holy would counter into something else. It was just like, it was the classic Jordan Holy match if you let Jordan Holy play that match with you, and you're good enough to not get subbed immediately. Like, Andrew DeGraff put up phenomenal offense and defense here, and then late in the match, Holy goes, I'm going to put a stamp on this, not play legs, hits a beautiful pass to top, and kind of ends the match a little disrespectfully, just like mushing Andrew's face. Holy has a tendency to do this sometimes if he's trying to put a stamp on a match at the end, like showing just how positionally dominant he can be if he's not just going to play in the legs. Takes a clear decision here over Andrew DeGraff. But this was actually a really fun one. I think if you're interested in getting into like the 45er to 55er leg lock game, I think Holy's a really interesting guy to watch, because actually this match is a really interesting match to watch because it has a lot of dynamics of what occurs in leg lock battles at this weight class. Next one, and the final one, we had Ali Wolski defeating Natalie Santoro via armbar. We kind of
Natalia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd I say?
Natalie.
Nat. They call him Nat.
Son.
Gordon's girlfriend. I think the last time we've covered her match, she was a blue belt. She is now a brown belt. I don't know what belt Ali Wolski is, but frequent high-level competitor. We've covered her matches before. This, I think, is exactly what we called in the preview of last week. It was just we didn't really know where Santoro was at. Santoro is good, brown belt, but just doesn't compete frequently, and that like familiarity competing versus high-level competition is something that you kind of need making your debuts and making your like only having sporadic matches on big level super fights with Gordan, the biggest grappler in the world, headlining.
Yeah.
Ton of pressure. And also just she doesn't have the experience that I think she needs to deal with somebody like Ali. And that kind of showed here because she puts up great work initially, and then Ali sort of figures out where she wants to go, and then sort of just hits a counter off of a guard pass from Santoro and finishes a really, really tight armbar. Hope Santoro's arm isn't hurt here, but because it looked very, very strong. Again, if she's going to be on Who's Number One, I would love to see her competing more frequently on other stuff.
Yeah.
Because
we're just competing more frequently in general. Like even if she did more Who's Number Ones.
Yeah, just see her more frequently because I think you're going to have a really hard time matching her appropriately if you kind of take into consideration she's Gordon's girlfriend.
Yeah.
She's Gordon's trainer. Like I think it's
you can't win off instructionals alone.
Yeah. I don't think she's going to get appropriate matchups because she just doesn't have that long-standing competitive experience at the belt levels or in Nogi. So kind of what we expected here, but she plays an interesting game. I enjoyed the pieces of her game. She's active in the way that she plays, which I appreciate because not all grapplers are. They get on the stage, they kind of freeze up. She played through a good game and had great moments initially, but Ali, you saw her kind of figure out exactly where, she kind of figured out the sequences that Santoro wanted to play through, and then went, cool, I'm going to counter armbar you off of your passing sequence, and then Santoro didn't really have a great defensive option from the transition, and Ali was just 2 steps ahead of her on the armbar, and gets a really great finish. So that was the card. Overall, pretty good card. I think that's the best from Who's Number One, but definitely some really, really exciting matches. I wish that they would fix some of the camera work, and I wish they would fix some of the rule set to provide some more aggressive engagement requirements. I think I would love to see them move to ADCC rule set. I think it's the pinnacle of the sport in Nogi. Just use that rule set. It's the one that we care about being used. So I would like all organizations to just straight up bring the ADCC refs in. You have a ton of them locally. Enigma uses them locally. Like ADCC, Mo is there. Like Mo will absolutely get his best refs to help, do your event because he is looking to further that rule set. Just do that. Have good commentary that understands that rule set to explain it, and you do with Ricardo and Sean Williams. They know the game. They know the rule sets. And just do ADCC rule set. But that's all I got for that. Simon, any kind of closing thoughts on what would you think about the event? What did you think about the card?
It was pretty fun. I mean, the fights that were boring were boring. The fights that were exciting were exciting as well. It was a good card. It was overall a net positive.
Yeah. I do like the Thursday cards. It makes it hard to get together, but
yeah, I don't.
I would like them. I would like them on Saturday or Friday night would be fun because then I can finish teaching and then get to people together. I got this new house now that I've moved 50% of my house in one day.
That's not 50,
dude. It's 50. You should see the boxes.
Okay.
I moved, and so we got a van now. So we're gonna move probably. I'm probably going to move the next 3 hours till midnight or 1 a.m. I was planning on we do a slow move. My wife and I would be like, we're going to do a slow move. We moved half of the house today and last night. We closed yesterday and we've already moved. Now we've done the podcast early so I can break down the entire show setup and put up the new beautiful show setup in a whole dedicated section of the house, which I'm amped for. Again, we've done the podcast for 350 episodes. And really excited for some more episodes in a new space with maybe some additional resources to keep putting on a show at the quality that I would like to put on, because the grappling is just the level of grappling has never been better. The level of matchmaking, I think, has never been better. The style of organizations, the amount of organizations, the compensation for the athletes has never been better. And it's been wild to watch this show grow since Josh and I started doing the show in like 2017. The landscape of the sport expanding to the level, like we have $1 million tournament that we're gonna go to in 2 months. Like, if you would have said that in 2019, I would have laughed at you.
Basically, everybody would have.
Yeah. It wasn't even a thing. Like, a $10,000 tournament then was a big. I mean, when we started the show, we were covering events that were non-cash prize. We were covering events that, like, we would bump a non-cash prize event to cover like a $500 event. We were covering events that just had a cash prize, because that's what, when we started the show, we were big on, like, hey man, I want to see the athletes get paid. I want to see them get compensated, because that is how you have longevity of career, because you're paying guys to be able to be competitors. And now we're seeing it. Now we have 10,001 to show. ADCC is matching the women's purse money with the men's purse money. Like, we're seeing it coming to fruition of, like, yeah, there's guys that can now. Back then, Gordan was the only guy that could make a living competing. He did it on constructionals, but if you looked at he talked about his salary from competing, he could do it from his competition money. He was the only guy that could do it. He still kind of is the only guy, but I think we're moving to a place where it's more viable and more guys can actually just be professional competitors. And that's a really cool world to be in. It's been, again, cool to watch that transition over the last 6 years in this home and in this space, as the podcast setup has changed many years from basically, we started in this space in 2018.
Well, actually, didn't you and Josh start at the old house?
At the old house, yep.
So this is now
This
a
will be the
new iteration
new house,
coming out.
So we started at the old house with just audio. Every week, weekly show, audio only. And then one day in this house, I set up a camera on Josh about halfway through, because we used to do the show in segments. We used not to do the show in one recording. We used to break it up by event, by previews and recaps. And I was like, hey, I'm going to put a camera on it for the beginning segment. And he was like, okay. I did it once, and then I got some camera setups, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this now. And he went, every week? And I was like, every week. He's like, you need to do anything? I was like, nope, I'm going to do all the editing and do everything. I will learn how to do all of that, and we're just going to do a video show, because I think there's a good, an audience that would really appreciate having the video show and having something on a platform like YouTube where the audio is just, the platform is moving away from just straight up audio with a background. And the early Grappling Grind episodes have just audio and a background because we didn't have video. I think episode like 68, we moved to video in this house. And then we've done it for now almost 300 episodes. And then we've changed the configuration from being over there to being a dawn table to having a nice table to having the background. And like it's wild over the years to watch the podcast, how much it has grown, how much it has set up. You came onto the team during that time. The whole team expanded greatly from just Josh and I in this house to the whole Grappling Grind team that we have with you, Josh, Austin, Zach, Miranda, even the co-hosts that we'll bring in occasionally. We'll have some folks in for ADCC, people that have sat in and like done partial shows like Damon, Corey, Will, like those guys have come in and really have a great team here. And it's been really great to be able to build that team and work with everyone, in this space. And I'm really excited for what a new space is going to do for the podcast. Still gonna be the same show, but it's an exciting move forward in my life, my wife's life. So excited for some more episodes of the podcast.
Happy for you.
Thank you, man. Any other kind of closing thoughts of the week? Anything fun going on this week?
Hopefully gonna sleep tonight. That'll be fun.
Me too. I got like 3.5 hours of sleep last night from moving because I had coffee at closing and I had like a large, so like by 8 o'clock I'm still drinking coffee and I'm like, oh no, that's a problem. 4 a.m. rolls around, I'm looking at my ceiling like, I have to move my house more tomorrow. And I have to do the podcast tomorrow. We bumped it back like 2 hours and got dinner, and it's been a phenomenal day. I'm truly thankful to be in the position that we are now, to be able to continue to do the show through all that.
It's really gonna suck when like 3 stories break tomorrow, though.
Oh yeah, always. It's like is a tale as old as time. 30 minutes after the podcast ends, major news announcement, like major dropout, major match announcement, or We record the show, and then it comes out Tuesday morning, and then Tuesday morning news is like, oh, major event canceled. It's just like, it's always it's like, I mean, the podcast, our Grappling Grind team chat just kind of blows up like, the news, the normal. It's like, yep, it's Tuesday. Yep, here it is. Just a tale as old as time. So, Simon, any other closing thoughts?
No, get some sleep.
I'm excited. So, as always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, to my co-host,
Simon.
and we are the Grappling Rewind. See you on the mat, whatever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
Let us know.
reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.